So this week's episode of Angels of Death, we have a pretty fascinating episode once again. What I really like is how the priest was presented in this episode. Now, it was clear that he was judging Rachel, figuring out what it is that's going on in her head. But I like this episode in particular with overall what he was going for, because he really does lay it all out, saying like, you know, I had a little bit of hope for you, Rachel, because you were so bound and bent on getting medicine for Zach that made me think that, hey, you might be a normal person with compassion, but you clearly are messed up. Everything you're doing is for your own self-worth. The way you handled obstacles, it was in such a violent and just not really a humane way. And even the idea of getting medicine for Zach, you're just doing it because supposedly he swore to God. And I like how he actually does throw everything in Rachel's face in this episode, because, you know, my first impression of the guy was he was just going to be another floor boss and that's that. But he actually has a pretty interesting personality and drive. He actually really does feel like, you know, he's the guy who truly understands what God would want to think if you did believe in God in this world, whereas Rachel is clearly using God as a crutch to escape from emotional trauma. And I love how he does say, so you're saying that he has to kill you because he swore to God, but what if I swore to God? Or what if someone else swore to God? Isn't it up for God to decide who kills you? And I love just how she reacts and how everything, it's really starting to become more clear to her. I think that the things that she thinks she understands is just a fabrication in her mind, and she's trying to escape from things that she doesn't want to confront. And I quite like that overall. And how this episode functioned with Danny and Zach and just all the characters overall, like, it was fun to see some familiar faces and how you look at someone like Danny, you're like, how did that guy survive? Okay, so he planned a bit because he understood that Zach probably would hurt him, and then he also kind of used the medication, so that's how he survived. Zach, on the other hand, that guy's been losing liters and liters of blood. Who knows what's going on with Zach? We're just gonna have to leave it to anime logic for now, and maybe down the line we'll understand why Zach can lose so much blood and still carry on. Maybe he had some modifications done, or maybe it's just anime logic. We'll have to wait and see there. I really like how the idea of this episode was showing both how Rachel and Zach are viewing one another. They're kind of lying, because it's clear as day both of them care for one another past just, you're gonna kill me, I'm gonna help you escape, that's our relationship. No, there's clearly some sort of friendship or family bond that's being formed or is already formed. Zach clearly does care for Rachel's well-being. The fact that he does give her a knife at the end, which is a very close item to him so she can protect herself, like, he doesn't want her to die. If he wanted her to die, he would have just given Danny her eyes and then he would have killed her. It's clear as day that Zach does care for Rachel in some capacity, either as an older brother relationship or just as someone who, just a friend in general. Whereas Rachel is saying, like, I'm only using you because you swore to God, but she even admits in this episode that it's more than that. If someone else would have said the same thing, she wouldn't have cared. And I like how it's clear, like, we understand that Rachel is escaping emotional trauma from her past. We saw that still frame of one of her parents stabbing the other of some capacity. We know something bad happened in her past, and it probably was much worse than just that. But I like how everything is kind of being thrown in her face, and she's starting to have to confront things. I like how this episode is taking the things that we expected with their characters and now kind of making them come to terms with it. How Zach, you know, he had so many chances in this episode to just screw over Rachel, but he didn't. It's more than just escaping the building at this point. He actually does want her to maybe want a bit more in life than just to get killed by him. I think he actually does want something good for her life, whereas Rachel is trying to convince herself that, you know, he swore to God, all this kind of BS. It's clear their relationship has actually grown to a point where they might even be considered friends at this particular moment. And I think that's actually pretty wonderful. With this episode, I think the directing was pretty good. This episode really was highlighting facial reactions. There was a lot of very much close-up shots on just tormented faces. I think it actually added a lot of that impact where you're just like, you felt a little uncomfortable. You know, Rachel was seeing monsters that Zach couldn't see, but then ultimately there actually was a snake monster there. Like, it's hard to say, like, what's real in this building and what's fake, and I think that adds a lot to this building because it's clear that this is a test for Rachel to confront her demons, but at the same time, it's hard to tell what is real and what's fake, and I think it adds a lot of psychological trauma for the characters, primarily Rachel. With just the overall voice acting, I think since Zach has been kind of wounded and just gushing blood every episode, he hasn't really had the energy to scream and go over the top like he has been in past episodes, and his voice actor has really stole the show in my opinion, because when Zach goes overboard with his demonic laughs, it feels so fake and out of place, but when he's just talking or just has more of these kind of like psychotic undertones, he steals the show 100%, and since he hasn't really had the energy to laugh, kind of crazy like, it actually has been really good voice acting, and it doesn't just sound like Bakugo screaming his ass off like he does in many scenes, and overall Rachel as well. I think since she's kind of starting to confront her feelings, there's just this underlining kind of uncertainty with her voice. It feels more than just monotone like it might have in the beginning stages, because now she's starting to have feelings again and not lock them so far away. This episode was pretty fun. I'm interested to see what Rachel's plan is in this moment. Clearly she probably wants to confront Dr. Danny. She has the knife, but like, does she just want to stab Danny, get the medicine, or how this episode functioned, you know, with the priest confronting her about using people, how clearly Zack is more to her than just a tool. Is she going to try to find a more peaceful way than a violent one to solve this obstacle and get Zack the help he desperately needs? I think that's actually a pretty interesting moment. This is a pretty fun episode. I like how their relationship really is the star of this anime, Zack and Rachel, but how some of the side characters do influence and kind of make them confront their demons. It's pretty fun. Overall, let me know what you're feeling down in the comment section below. Did you love the episode? Did you hate it? Your favorite moment? Whatever you're feeling, let me know. And be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel if you happen to be new. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.